Mr. Bowtie's Texas High School Sports Machine is driven by Henry Finley and McCombs Ford West, a proud supporter of all area local sports. McCombs Ford West, simply the best. Hey folks, Mr. Bowtie here. Keep banging home that red subscribe button on your screen so that way you can stay up to date on all the great local sports coverage that TV and radio refuse to cover. Thank you so much and enjoy the show.
Kind of back into a little bit of the normal format now. We had a couple years with COVID where we weren't able to get on the road and get out and speak and see people. So to have this opportunity to get around and to get out and see people and speak is it's exciting. It's fun.
I know there's a couple kids in San Antonio that you recruit. Are you kind of getting familiar with the Texas landscape?
I am. I think, like I said, I had a chance in January to really get out to the high schools and to meet a lot of the high school coaches because that was the first time we've been out here in about a year and a half. And it's been great. The reception's been great. Obviously, our assistant coaches get to spring recruit, which is what they're doing now. I don't get to go to the high schools this time of year, but I think the connection's been made and we've forged really good relationships, which is going to be critical, not just for this year, but for our future.
Coach, how are you handling the whole new landscape of college football right now with the NIL, the transfer portals? How much of an adjustment has that been for coaches?
Well, I think there's been plenty, and I think that the reality is you have to adapt to it all because if you don't adapt, then you fall behind. And when you start talking about the transfer portal, when you start talking about NIL, but yet, like in our case, still really building our culture the way you want, I think that we have to be really cognizant of those two things, but also recognize the types of kids and character that we're looking for in our locker room to build our culture. But to act as if everything's just the same, I'd be wrong in doing that. So just try to be adaptable and try to navigate it as best we can. I think we still have some potential rule changes coming down the pipe here that could affect us some. Until those are official, we'll see, but we have to prepare for those rule changes as they may come.
Do you think that that's a necessary thing, rule changes?
I think so. Again, we set precedent with rules based off of a previous structure, recruiting structure, and now that has changed. And primarily with the transfer portal, the fact that you end spring ball and you can have 6-7 kids go in the portal. Well, how do I get those scholarships back on my team? And so if they end up going to just an 85 total number as opposed to the initial counters, I think that would benefit everybody, not just University of Texas, but everybody involved.
Steve, how do you go through having to re-recruit a lot of these athletes? Because that's what a lot of these coaches have been telling me, that they have to go back and re-recruit them year after year.
Yeah, I think in the end, when you treat people really well and they get a sense and a feel that, man, I'm getting developed as a player, as a person, as a student, I don't necessarily feel like I have to re-recruit. I think the reality of it is you have to go back to go through their experience in working with us. But I think if kids don't get treated well or they're not having a great experience, then you have to try to re-recruit them. But I think the re-recruiting, if you want to call it that, is an ongoing process from the day that they arrive on campus. And that doesn't mean that we're not demanding and that we're not pushing people to become their best and to strive to be their best. But there is a fine line. But if we're not developing them as people, as players, and demanding of what their ceiling is and pushing them towards that ceiling, then I'm doing them a disservice by not coaching them hard enough and not coaching them to be the best that they can be. So if that's not for somebody, if that's not what they're looking for, then maybe we aren't the place for them.
Coach, back to the culture thing. Did you notice in the spring already a bit of a culture change than at the end of the last season?
Drastically different. I was talking to a couple different people last week. From where we are today, from where we were a year ago, night and day. We're just a closer team. I think the connection between, staff to staff. We were a new staff a year ago, staff to player, and then player to player, and the things that we emphasize are now not just words on a board or in a team meeting, but we're actually living those out. That's what's coming to life, and I think that the process has been organic. It's been positive. Clearly, what we brought was not for everybody, and that's okay. I wasn't expecting it to be that way, but I think that the players that are in our program, the players that recruited to our program, really believe in what we're doing and why we're doing it that way, and it's a lot more cohesive for sure.
Steve, you made some staff changes. One of them, Tashard Choice, who I went to school at Oklahoma with. Two-part question. Number one, how'd you get him away from Georgia Tech? And number two, how'd you get him to get rid of the Sooner stuff for the burnt orange?
Well, I think Choice, a couple things. One, he was only at OU for the 1 year, and then he went back to Georgia Tech. And then, obviously, he was coaching at Georgia Tech, and it actually was planning on going to USC, and we were able to get him. He's already made the decision to leave, and we were able to get him here. And I think he's got some really good roots in Texas now with his time with the Cowboys, his time coaching high school football in the state of Texas, and his time coaching at North Texas. So the reality of it is I think he's always held the University of Texas in high regard, and he's been a great addition. I mean, this guy is a great coach, great mentor, unbelievable energy, and we're lucky to have him.
Talk about being here today. How important is that for you to be a part of something like this?
Well, I think it's big. My thing is we've got a great sport, and we support all things that come with the game of football, and this is no different. Unfortunately, like football, injuries occur. Things happen in our game, and the idea that we can support that aspect of it and support kids that potentially do get injured, whether it's in the short term or the long term, that's the idea, because we've got a great game that in my opinion really helps young men grow to become men, to help them be better in life, husbands, fathers, coaches, mentors, whatever they end up becoming. But this is an aspect of our game that is a reality, and so if I can support this, I'm more than happy to.